What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the channel, and today we are going to do a mock draft, and I've played around with the idea that the Carolina Panthers have been doing a bit of a fire sale of their roster. They traded Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers, and I've played around with the idea that maybe Brian Burns is the next to go. Make sure to hit subscribe on this, leave a like, and your comments in the comment section. We're going to cover 2 rounds worth of drafting here today. Let's waste no more time. Let's get to it. And of course, we're using the current draft order after this last week's game. So we got the Detroit Lions number 1 going Bryce Young. I'll just do the top 3. CJ Stroud to Houston, Will Levis to Carolina. These are 3 teams that are in a position right now where they all need quarterbacks. And I know Will Levis seems like a bit of a reach, but when you're the Carolina Panthers, they're sort of stuck in this situation now where if they're not in the top 2, they have to use this top pick on a quarterback because there's too many teams coming up that would snipe Will Levis from them. And I think Will Levis is the number 3 quarterback in this draft. So the top 3 teams have to get their quarterbacks, and they do. Then we got Will Anderson going to the Philadelphia Eagles. Just take the best player on the board. It fills a tremendous need for them. Now they can get some of the old heads out of there, clear up some cap space. Houston with yet another pick. Take the best player on the board. It's Jalen Carter. Help with a 3-down interior defensive lineman. It's just so important that Houston continues to add really strong players. I'm not so sure that Lovie Smith is going to be the head coach in Houston come next year. I feel like he's the ultimate bridge coach, sort of like what we saw with Dennis Allen in New Orleans, and even more so now that these teams are picking as high as they are. But on the assumption, maybe Lovie Smith gets an extension or gets an extra year, or maybe somebody with a similar system. But Jalen Carter fits so many different systems. He can be a Warren Sapp in a Tampa 2. He can be a 3-4 defensive end. You can move him really around that interior. So you have to make sure that you snag him. I feel like that's really the top 4 players in the draft, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, will end up going in the top 5. Then it's Seattle, and with no quarterback on the board and the top 2 defensive linemen off, they just go with Keely Ringo. Now, my thought process behind this is you're getting great play out of rookie Tariq Woolen, who's my front runner for Defensive Rookie of the Year. You also got Kobe Bryant, who you drafted, who can play in the slot. And then you get Keely Ringo here, and you've got a great young cornerback group with 3 quality players, and it takes a lot of the pressure off of Tariq Woolen, and him and Keely Ringo can sort of spread the love around there, maybe just lock up on one side a piece, and you've got the potential to recreate that quote-unquote Legion of Boom defensive back room. And here comes Pittsburgh. I got him going with Paris Johnson, the tackle out of Ohio State. They need to do something with that offensive line. Get rid of Okafor, get out of that contract, plug in Paris Johnson there at one of the tackle positions. Got to protect the quarterback. Got to get Najee Harris going. Jacksonville taking the top wide receiver for me on the board, Jordan Addison. It's going to be close with him and Quentin Johnston. I just think that Jordan Addison might end up just beating him out, especially I think for the sake of the Jaguars, who have put money into guys like Zay Jones, who are a bit of bigger body guys. Now we're going to the next group of picks, and it's Brian Breezy, the defensive tackle, going to the Raiders. They have to continue solidify this defense. You take the best player on the board, I think, in this situation if you're the Raiders, and Brian Breezy's had a tremendous year. The Atlanta Falcons, they need edge rushers. I got him going with Myles Murphy. Unleash him, so to speak, on the opposing team's quarterbacks and really help out. That offense has been working a lot more efficiently than I think was anticipated. So I think focusing maybe on the defensive side of the ball is in their best interest. This also will hopefully make things easier for A.J. Terrell and some of those young defensive backs. Miami, with the pick they got in the Trey Lance trade, Peter Skoronski, tackle out of Northwestern. This is your right tackle of the future, your backside protector for Tua. Then it's Tyree Wilson. I got him going to the Arizona Cardinals. He's somebody who just traits-wise, length-wise, body type is going to find his way shooting up draft boards. I don't think he'll end up ahead of Myles Murphy, but he's certainly going to be, I think, the number 3 guy up in that position group. And Arizona really needs that position group as well as the cornerback room. So I think they'll just swing at whoever would be the highest on their board in that scenario. Here come the Patriots. It's Joey Porter Jr., cornerback, Penn State. I think that the Patriots are going to love him just on a character standpoint, on a positional need standpoint. I think he'll fit right in with what they're doing. Then the Bears, Quentin Johnston, wide receiver, TCU. Justin Fields finally had a big game, but he still doesn't seem to have the weapons out there on the field. And Darnell Mooney needs some type of complement out there, and Quentin Johnston can come in, be a bigger body receiver at 6'4", and help out Justin Fields. And just this offense altogether, you have to invest in Justin Fields, and this is one of the ways you do it. Then the Washington Commanders come with Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback out of Oregon. He's another one sort of flying up boards. He could be cornerback 2, cornerback 3 in this class. He's cornerback 3 for me currently as it stands. But I don't think you can go wrong taking him or Joey Porter or Cam Smith. They're all sort of in that same grouping right now. And Washington, you got to combat what's happening in your division. Jalen Hurts is getting much better. You got to assume that Dallas is going to keep adding receivers. The Giants' offense is working extremely efficiently, and Brian Daboll's offense is one that is about passing the ball, and you only can think that they're going to improve as time goes on. You need to be able to keep up. And then here comes Green Bay, one of the more disappointing teams so far this year. And I'm taking the best receiver on the board, JSN. They need someone who can separate, and they need someone who can just play at all at that wide receiver position. It is a nightmare out there. A lot of people blaming Aaron Rodgers. I'm just not one of those people. When your receivers can't get separation, there's only so much quarterbacks can do. But I think that if they're picking in this situation, they have to take one of the receivers. There's going to be 3, maybe 4 receivers going in the first round, I think. I don't think it'll get to 5. I don't think they'll see the value in a 5th wide receiver getting into the first round unless somebody truly breaks out towards the end of the year and then has a great workout in combine. But Green Bay in a perfect situation to grab JSN, plug him in right away. You got pair him up with Romeo Doubs. You got Christian Watson out there, and JSN can play in that slot role. And you can hopefully year 2 with Doubs and Watson, there's a little bit more knowledge there. There's a little bit more chemistry there. And then JSN, with his great ability, I think he immediately becomes the best receiver of the 3. And he can play in that slot role, take up a lot of the stuff that you got with Randall Cobb, even some of the stuff that you missed out with Devontae Adams as well. Next group, the Colts are going to take Tanner McKee, quarterback out of Stanford. They're in a weird position because I think that just based on what happened now with Matt Ryan, he's benched for the rest of the year. I don't know that they're going to be picking this high. I think they might borderline be tanking the season to get more in range for Will Levis, CJ Stroud, or Bryce Young, at the very least in some sort of trade situation. Like maybe hope that one of those 3 teams at the top that need quarterbacks will have too good of a year, and then maybe you can trade up ahead of them to get one of the top 3 quarterbacks. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how they work that out. But Tanner McKee, another Stanford quarterback for the Colts. I think they'll have a new head coach as well. So new head coach, new quarterback. Here comes Jalen Duncan off the board for the Bengals. It hasn't really worked out with La'el Collins. And you just need more options out there. Better, cheaper options. Cam Smith to Tampa Bay. They're going to lose Jamel Dean or Sean Murphy-Bunting. So you got to be able to replace him. You might end up actually losing both, which could be a bit of a disaster. And here's the Brian Burns trade. They're at least going to be getting here this 20th pick in the draft from the Detroit Lions. So Detroit trades the 20th pick as well as maybe a future first in order to get Brian Burns from Carolina. And Carolina will take Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas, just grabbing the best weapon on the board is my logic train here. And then you'll have more picks that you acquire for Brian Burns later to fill out other positions. But I think that's really important. You just get the best pure weapon on the board. He's a 3-down back. I know the running back value is a little wonky, and the thought of trading Brian Burns and getting a running back for him is a little bit not as desirable. But based upon the people that are currently available on the board, I think Bijan is far and away the best player on the board. So why not take him? You have 2 picks coming up in the second round where you can add guys at the edge. You can maybe add an interior offensive lineman, a receiver that at this position would definitely be a reach. And I don't think this is so much of a reach to grab him here. Then you got Broderick Jones going to the Chargers. That's your right tackle. Put him next to Zion Johnson. Trenton Simpson, probably the only linebacker that's going to be taken in the first round. This is it's an interesting linebacker group for sure. Ravens grab him. It's one of their biggest needs on the team. They did a lot of investing on the offensive side of the ball last year. And here's Seattle taking Anthony Richardson. Now, I know this is an odd pick, perhaps, but Geno Smith has played well enough where I think they can bring him back on maybe a 1-2 year deal, maybe with an out for year 2. And then you draft a project quarterback with a 5-year option, 5th-year option. And Richardson, can sit for the year. And I think that you're really comfortable with having Geno Smith run that offense. And then, then you might dump him when Richardson is ready after a year or 2. And then you got all this extra cap room that you're not investing into Geno Smith. And you get the best time and best years out of Geno Smith, who has really had a breakout season this late in his career. Here's Tennessee, Isaiah Foskey. Just take the best edge rusher on the board. You need something out there. Harold Landry, when he returns, you're going to need a good partner, a good solid partner for him out there. And I don't know, that's Bud Dupree. Certainly not the price point that Bud Dupree's there at. Here come one of the most shocking teams in the NFL, the New York Jets. They take Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle, Penn State. Mekhi Becton, he's out of there. I could see them probably getting maybe a 3rd-round pick in a trade for him if they don't just cut him right away. I think teams will be willing to throw a 3rd-round pick to get maybe Mekhi Becton. I'm not so sure about a 2 or a 1. Then you got Osiris Torrance going to the Cowboys. This is your left guard of the future, playing next to Tyler Smith. I think Tyron Smith is going to be just about done at the end of the year. I could see him and Ezekiel Elliott being 2 guys that just get cut, released, traded, whatever, to free up some cap room, and then they can slide in these beasts into their replacement spots. Then we got the Vikings taking Michael Mayer, the tight end out of Notre Dame. This is their George Kittle. McDonald's carrying over that Shanahan / McVay / whatever offense, and it requires this type of a tight end, that George Kittle, Tyler Higbee type. And Michael Mayer, this could end up being one of the biggest steals of the whole draft. Then we got Kansas City taking Felix Anudike Uzomah, edge rusher, Kansas State. I feel like defensive line is going to be where they go in the first round. They got to compete with some of these high-powered offenses, and there's not really anybody available right now that would increase their offensive firepower the way that they really need it to be. And here are the New York Giants, my New York Giants, saying Kayshon Boutte, the best wide receiver on the board from LSU. Up and down season, but I think he's going to start to come around a lot more. His workouts, I'm sure, will do great, and the Giants really need to add a wide receiver in there. It's going to be hard to continue to win games with Richie James and David Sills and Marcus Johnson as the receivers. Then we got the Buffalo Bills. It's Antonio Johnson, defensive back out of Texas A&M, safety, corner, nickel, box safety. He'll play a bunch of different roles for them. Then we got the Eagles, and this is a real luxury pick for them based upon their roster, and it's Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back out of Alabama. They can get cut bait with Miles Sanders and throw a rookie in there. Then Miami, of course, loses their pick due to tampering. Moving on to the second round here, and we're sort of going to fly through this. I got the Lions taking Noah Sewell, the linebacker out of Oregon. Houston taking B.J. Ojulari, the edge rusher of LSU. He fell a bit in this draft. He's somebody who's like that fringe first rounder. I could see him going as high as the early 20s. And here's the edge rusher for the Carolina Panthers, Andre Carter, the second edge out of Army. High character guy. Introduce him into that roster. Help him continue to rebuild it with a much cheaper option after you trade Brian Burns, theoretically, in this draft. The Saints take Hendon Hooker, quarterback out of Tennessee. He's getting a lot of hype, and I could see him. The only thing is his age, which is why I had Richardson sort of go ahead. like a younger, raw version with maybe more of a ceiling. But the Saints are in a position where it's got to be so frustrating for them not to have a quarterback that they can truly trust for 17 games. Here are the Browns taking Jared Verse, edge rusher out of Florida State. This is finally somebody that they can pair up with Myles Garrett, hopefully long term. Get rid of that Jadeveon Clowney contract. Then you got Siaki Ika for the Seahawks, filling on that interior defensive line. They missed out on Jalen Carter at the top of the draft. They missed out on Will Anderson. Now you can add somebody into that front four. You got Boyan Mafe, who you drafted this past draft. You can bring in there more full-time and really help build that front four on the defense. Then you got Pittsburgh taking Clark Phillips III, cornerback out of Utah. Another guy that's, maybe dropped a little bit, along with Ojulari. He could easily, depending on how the cornerback room, if there's a run on corners early in the first round, he could find his way into that first round as well. And then you got the Jags taking Gervin Dexter. Put him in there with into that defensive line rotation. Allows you to cut bait with a couple different other guys. And it's still a need for them. Even though you got Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker sort of working the edges, you need to build that interior as well. And Gervin Dexter, I think, gives you a 3-down interior defensive lineman. Here are the Raiders swinging at Anton Harrison. This is everything they were hoping Alex Leatherwood could be. They got to figure out the other tackle position. Zach Charbonnet, running back for UCLA, going to Atlanta. I actually really like this. Charbonnet coming up, being that running back 3, running back 4, finding his way into the second round. And here's Carolina again. This one is Josh Downs, wide receiver out of North Carolina. This is the pick that they got from San Francisco in the Christian McCaffrey trade. So they added a weapon in there. So now you've added a quarterback, you've added a top class running back, a wide receiver into that room, and you've got your edge rusher. So you're really starting to replace the guys that you're moving away from and helping complement some of the guys that you're keeping. Arizona, they need corners. They took edge in the first round, so they take Garrett Williams here. Henry 2020, linebacker, Alabama, to the Patriots. Doesn't just sound like he should be one. And again, the Bears now investing in Justin Fields, their quarterback, this time grabbing a tackle. They need tackles. Moving Tevin Jenkins into guard. They have Alex Leatherwood, who at best case is going to be a guard if he even doesn't wash out of the NFL altogether. Washington grabs Jaren Hall, the quarterback out of BYU. Don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be. Are they going to stick with Taylor Heineke, cut bait with Carson Wentz, and Sam Howell is going to be there, create sort of like a 3-man competition there going into the season? They got to figure that out, though. Here comes another guy dropping a bit, can find his way into the first round. Wouldn't shock me. It's Brian Branch, safety out of Alabama, going to Green Bay. This is the guy that's their plug-in once they cut bait, probably with Adrian Amos. Here are the Colts taking Cedric Tillman, wide receiver out of Tennessee, adding weapons to that group. This is a guy who you can put with Pittman and Alec Pierce for Tanner McKee and hopefully have something true for the future at the wide receiver group. And then, of course, you can't discount Jelani Woods, the tight end they drafted this year. I think is going to be a star, someone I really wanted for my Giants. Happy with Daniel Bellinger, though. And then, of course, Jonathan Taylor, who you're just praying you can figure out a way to keep around. Here come the Bengals, Devin Witherspoon, cornerback, Illinois. Got to be able to compete on the back end. Is Jesse Bates going to stick around? What's that situation going to look like in your secondary altogether? Then you got Tampa, Darnell Washington, tight end Georgia, very traitsy guy. His size, I think, is going to really make teams feel comfortable taking him in the second round. Then you got the Rams, first pick, Zion Nelson. You got to have a functioning offense with the Rams. And their tackle positions, I think, are getting kind of exposed. Their offensive line in general is kind of getting exposed. So you need to give Matt Stafford some time. He ain't going to be running anywhere, so you got to be able to protect him. Now the next 2 linebackers come off the board back-to-back. Jack Campbell to the Dolphins, Drew Sanders to the Chargers. 2 positions of need, I think, for this team. The Chargers, I think, more so than the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins are just taking guys to throw out there. I think Campbell and Channing Tindall now can be a nice little pairing moving forward. The Ravens take Sean Tucker, running back Syracuse. Their entire offense is based upon their ability to run and also their ability to run in between the tackles. And I think Sean Tucker is going to be a great addition to that room. Allows them to maybe cut bait on some contracts that are coming up at the running back position where they don't need to worry about spending that money there. They can spend it elsewhere. Nolan Smith finally finds his way off the board here to the Seahawks. He'll be the one opposite Boye Mafe moving forward with Siaki Ika and Shelby Harris there in the interior, looking like a great defense building in Seattle. And closing it out here, we got Rashee Rice going to Tennessee. He'll be the outside receiver to put out there with Treylon Burks and then Kyle Phillips in the slot, who's having a pretty decent year as a slot receiver. Jordan Battle to the Jets. That fills their safety need. Blake Corum, the running back out of Michigan. This is the guy you pair up with Tony Pollard going forward. You cut bait with the Ezekiel Elliott contract. Zach Harrison's having a great year. He keeps getting better every week. Put him out there as an edge rusher for Minnesota. Again, they're an older edge group with Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. And it's always good to have that third true guy in there that you can work in, get him comfortable to the NFL speed, get him used to working situationally. They got Tua Pelotu, the defensive tackle for USC. This is the guy you put next to Chris Jones. Giants take John Michael Schmitz, the center out of USC. This solves a lot of issues that the Giants have had on their offensive line, which is on that interior. They solve the tackle positions, solve the interior, get yourself a franchise center, best center on the board, John Michael Schmitz. Speaking of solving interior offensive line problems, you got Andrew Voorhees going to the Bills. He's a guy that can go as high as the first round also. All depends on what happens with Osiris Torrance, but this is a big pickup for the Bills. And then we close it out with Brandon Joseph, safety, Notre Dame, to the Eagles. Just keep adding good players to that roster that is already looking so good and is currently still, as of this video, undefeated in the NFL. And that concludes the 2-rounder for this week. The week, I believe, week 7 mock draft, as we're approaching that trade deadline. These real trades are going to start to happen. You hope, you pray, but thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and like the video, like I said at the top. And I'll see you next time right here on Will Know Sports.